Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to first meeting of the new year. Stand. Remain standing for task or something. Yes, sir.
Oh, Heavenly Father, we come before you and we thank you, God, that you are the one that gives us life and that you are good and that you are faithful. We ask you, Lord, for tonight, for all the people that are traveling home, that you would just protect the roads. We pray, Father, that you would just continue to bless this town of Duanesburg, that you would keep people in their houses warm as they deal with this cold. And we also pray, Father, for our businesses, that you would continue to allow them to thrive in this area. Give this town board wisdom, give them clarity, and allow them to be a blessing to us. In this in Christ's name we pray.
Thank you. We started out for public hearings this evening.
Considering the adoption of local law number 1 of 2025, amending the town zoning ordinance to define poultry husbandry and to establish a maximum density of poultry husbandry. I would like to open a public hearing for that.
Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Capano.
Aye.
Supervisor Wonderful.
Aye. Okay, we will open the floor to comment. We had put out previously a copy of the law, and what this is addressing is the density requirements for a larger scale poultry operation. So we have anyone who would like to comment. If you do comment, I ask, please state your name and your address for the record.
Deanna Fox, I live at 475 Weaver Road in Delancey. So the issue that I have with this ordinance or this law is that it limits the number of fowl that you can have to 100 per acre, which seems to be counter to the 1991 law in the town of having a right to farm community. It seems counter to the ag districting within Duanesburg and Schenectady County. It also seems to be very stringent compared to other regulations that are already enacted throughout the state and by USDA and EPA standards. So for example, you only need 10 square feet per chicken in New York City. For one chicken, you need 10 square feet in New York City. I think if my math is right, it's about 42,000 and change square feet per acre. So this law would require that there are fewer chickens in Duanesburg, which is a right to farm community, than you could have in New York City on the same plot of land. To be certified humane, you only need 25 square feet per bird. And that's based on the certification process to the Humane Farm Animal Care, which is administered by the USDA. To be pasture raised, you only need 108 square feet per bird. So that's 403 birds per acre, which is 4 times the proposed limit in this law. So to me, this law seems to be not only an issue of NIMBYism at its worst, but it also seems anti-business and anti-agriculture. There are so few opportunities for people who don't have transport or higher education, post-secondary education in this town to have jobs. Agriculture has always been a place where people can have jobs, so it seems to me that if we have farming operations coming into this town that want to offer jobs and build a tax base for business, we should allow that. The issue also in the ordinance and the language related to environmental risk already is covered in my understanding of EPA and USDA laws related to contained animal feeding operations. 100 birds per acre definitely is not a contained animal feeding operation, and even in the 1.5 square feet per bird per unit, indoor unit, there's still stricter regulations for the USDA and EPA related to CAFOs than what this law even begins to cover. So it seems almost superfluous that we would have a 100 bird limit per acre. So I think that if this law is to be passed, I think it needs further review. It needs insight from agricultural entities, potentially from the Department of Ag Markets, New York State Department of Ag Markets, to really make sure that this law actually isn't just a waste of paper and it's addressing an issue. So thank you.
Just to address one item,
Yeah.
the law states 1.5 square feet per fowl.
Indoor, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but it says 100, my understanding is that it says 100, you can't have more than 100 birds per acre.
On a
I didn't see that.
on the 3-year-old idea, it would be 100.
Yeah. So that's a quarter of what would be allowed under the highest humane farming standard in the United States, which would be about 408 birds per acre. So it seems extremely restrictive. 100 birds isn't really, I mean, you could be within every law in New York State or the USDA standard in this room with 100 birds. So I think that there just needs to be more insight or guidance provided on this ordinance before it becomes law to make sure that we're remaining true to the 1991 right to farm law that we already have on the books, and just keep Dwaynesburg a farming community. There's so few farms now as it is. We should remain true to those roots. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gary Friesen, 548 State Highway 30. First, I'd like to respond to the young lady's citing of the right to farm law. Section 5 of the right to farm law of 1991 says that you may not bring a nuisance suit against a farmer if that farmer had been in business for 1 full year. This farm has never been in business that we're here to talk about, which is the one on State Highway 30. And so the right to farm law, in our opinion, doesn't apply here. Although we do, in theory, support the idea of farmers having a right to be in the town of Dwaynesburg, our complaint, and it's a very strong one, is that even though we stipulate that the farm of any kind is in conformance with the agricultural district, the location of this farm and the density of the poultry in this farm presents, in our opinion, not only just a risk of health problems for the neighbors because of its proximity to existing homes, but could almost say it's a clear and present danger. If you look on the internet, as most of our neighbors have, you'll find that website after website after website say the same thing, that there are increased risks of CAP, community acquired pneumonia, for homes, residences in proximity, as much as 1 kilometer, which is what, quarter of a mile to a mile from a poultry farm. Another website had a study that showed 83 times as many flies appearing in there. So our concern is that It's not that we don't think there should be a chicken farm in Dwaynesburg. We don't think there should be a chicken farm at 306 Route 30 in the middle of a relatively densely populated area of homes. The applicants, as you well know, went before the Zoning Board of Appeals on December 17th and answered questions of the board, one of which was about water. The applicant said that they don't know what the flow rate of water is, but they have a 250-foot well with water in it. I spoke with the person who drilled one of the wells today, and he told me that he drilled 700 feet. And in 7 days, he was able to get 100 feet of water in 7 days. 100 feet of water on a 6-inch casing is 150 gallons. If you look on the internet, not just once, but several sites will tell you that an egg-laying hen requires 1 pint of water per day. 40,000 chickens would require 5,000 gallons of water per day. If you go on the website again and ask the question, how much does a chicken defecate in a day? It'll tell you in several locations, 3 to 5 to 4 ounces of what they call chicken litter, which is another word for poop, pardon my French. 3.5 to 4 ounces of poop on 40,000 chickens represents 300 tons of chicken litter per year. The position of myself and my neighbors is that although we appreciate the town's effort to reasonably limit the number of chickens that this person could have in the middle of our residential neighborhood, we believe that this project presents an issue of public health, of public safety. That same person I spoke with said that there was a chicken farm here years ago, before we built here in 20 years ago, that in the summertime, you could smell chicken for a couple of miles in the town of Dwaynesburg, let alone this poor lady living in front of the chicken farm, within feet of the chicken farm. And according to a rough draft of the building, there were 2 large exhaust fans blowing chicken dander and all its toxins into her backyard. And if the wind is right, it'll just go into my yard. We feel very strongly that this idea of putting this chicken farm with 40,000 chickens, or even 5,000 or 7,000 chickens, do the math. I've given you the stats, would be a danger to our health and our safety. Last week, I received a town tax bill in which the town told me that my house was worth $520,000. Somebody raise their hand and tell me if they'll offer me $520,000 when this chicken farm is in place. Anybody? Not only do you destroy our health, but you destroy our property and our income and our livelihood. I'd like to retire sooner than later. Not going to be able to sell my house. The town attorney last time basically said that there's no way that the town could deny this application if it's a conforming use. I'm sorry, with all respect, we don't believe that. And we don't want to go to an Article 78 proceeding and have the town go before a judge and tell them why they allowed this application with this 40,000 chickens with an 18,000 square foot chicken coop. Why didn't they look at the public safety and public health of the neighbors and say, we're sorry, this is not a good location for this? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Mr. Wenzel, Jeff Barnes, Waynesburg Road. Has there been any talk or thought or consideration on the proposal that I submitted to the town? Towards the end of last month?
Everything is still in review at this.
Has it made any progress, or does it sound like it's not something that's worth going that
We're
route?
gonna have to take another look.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else like to speak on this? Yes, ma'am.
Dorothy Gallo, 488 Oak Hill Road. Are the people who are proposing this, are they going to be living right there on the property with the chickens?
Good one.
You can find my
It's
house.
over there in the corner. Do you have any information?
As of now, no, there's no residents gonna be on the property.
So it would be a commercial property.
Would that be categorized? And I'm gonna defer to our town attorney as to whether that would be categorized as commercial if there was no residents on the property.
We'd probably have to take a look at it.
Okay.
I didn't hear your answer.
We'd have to take a look at that.
Okay. Our other issue is not only the water, but the runoff to all of our wells. It goes far, and there are many of us. So that is a really big concern, in addition to all the things that Gary has mentioned. Our property will not have the value that it has right now to any one of us that's in there. And it'll even have less if the people proposing this are not living on that property. They're vested for what they're going to make in a profit, but they're not vested by living right next to the same odors and inconveniences that the rest of the neighbors are experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Charity vendor, State Route 7, Oak Hill. I just have a question on trying to bring it back to the local law a little bit. Who or what authority would be the one that would police, say this local law passed, and those are the standards that we're using? Who would be the one to police that the maybe new farms that are going in would actually meet those standards and not have more? We've seen many times in outskirts areas of this town where people are given permission for one and they do 7, 10, 15. So we're just, as a person that lives close, I don't want the rats at my house. There's all that other stuff, but I'm curious who would be the one that would be responsible to police something like that.
That would be the code enforcement officer. And they would have the responsibility of reviewing any site plans, building plans to make sure that any structures that were built would be compliant with the law.
But I'm asking like the number of chickens actually stay in the parameters that are, I'm just, for conversation's sake, if this passes, that we have the 1 chicken per 1.5 square feet or whatever it says in it. Yeah, who's counting the chickens?
Can I answer that?
Well, it would still be the code enforcement officer. Realistically, if there's a local law where there's a non-compliant use, it would fall in, and then it would be brought to a code enforcement proceeding.
I thought last month, I'm sorry, Terry Rapture, 334 Stay Highway 3rd. Last month, I remember somebody saying that you had no rights to just go on their property. So how would you then have a right to go police it? If you have no rights to go on their property,
I do, I have the right to the front door of any property.
the front door,
There won't be a front door.
right, there's no.
But it's an agricultural,
It's an yeah.
it's not, so it is, the chicken issue is a Department of Ag and Markets or USDA, Farm Service. They would monitor it. The other issue that you're talking about is nutrient runoff. So like all of the nitrogen that comes from chicken fertilizer. There's a comprehensive nutrient management plan that any contained animal feeding operation, which I don't know if it's 40,000 birds, I don't think that technically qualifies, but the EPA monitors that. And issues related to health are there, I mean, just today, there's more testing guidance, surveillance guidance, because of, high path avian influenza. So
Right, and somebody just died for out west. from the bird flu.
but not because they live next to a chicken farm.
You're on Weaver Road, you're not right next to it. It's not adjoining your property.
Sure, I understand, that's, if, I just think that if, I'm sympathetic to everybody's feelings, especially if you live right there. However, I think before we put something into law, it would just be pertinent for there to be more information provided or found or additional guidance given before we say you can't have more than 100 birds per acre, because I think that that actually will lead to more consequence beyond this issue to just pass that law. The law, as it's written, seems like a different issue entirely versus if we're gonna put a chicken farm under 30.
Excuse me, it's Terry Rupture again. Bill, I sent you an email yesterday asking about if this law was put into effect, was there any way that he was going to be able, he as in the new owners of the property, if they would be able to say, when I purchased my land, this law was not in effect, so I should be grandfathered in, blah, 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 by your laws that were in effect at that time. How is that law addressing it? And if we could put something in to address it, that this law or supersedes all other laws that we have had in the past or something to that effect.
The date of the application for building would be the critical date.
And they have not even put that in yet, correct?
Chris, can you address that for me?
No application. And theoretically, they can't even get a building permit until after, the county health starts doing perk tests again, which isn't until it stays this way, it could be April. So without an approved septic, I can't give a building permit.
So I guess that question of mine is mute then, because
Correct.
it would not be, okay.
May I
Sure.
again,
Yes, sir.
on the issue of enforcement, Chris rightly says that he can go to the front door. I asked this question last time, and the gentleman with the very nice looking sweater said, we can't go on their property. You remember saying that, sir?
No, I said in general,
In
I
general,
said we should, in general, we should have to be careful about intruding upon the property rights of landowners.
couldn't agree with you more.
I don't think it is appropriate for government agencies to be able to intrude on anybody's property rights too extensively. I am opposed to government overreach into property rights.
As am I. The question then is, if you set limits with no way of enforcing them, what good is the limit? The guy says, okay, I'll just have
From my
5,000.
perspective, there's a lot of enforcers. You're one.
But if you can't go on his property,
Enforcers.
if you can't go on his property, how can
But
I?
I'm not gonna go in and look at his,
If you're looking
Only
at
checks
checking,
your
you've
drugs
got
down there.
EPA that may be involved. You've got USDA that may be involved. There are gonna be people, inspectors going on to the property.
Can the town of Duanesburg guarantee that?
There's no 100% guarantees of anything.
So it doesn't have much teeth, frankly.
Oh, it definitely has teeth. They're out all the time.
Yeah, you can contact Ag and Markets and they'll go in on that complaint.
Then let me ask you this question. A year or two from now, after this gentleman goes with a much reduced chicken population, and he finds out that the business is not working. He's in debt because he can't make his revenues meet expenses. He decides to go into bankruptcy. He closes the door and he walks away. It's 5, 6, 7, probably by then 10 or 15,000 chickens because nobody checked. Now you have thousands of chickens in a bankrupt chicken coop where the guy just walks away. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's a possibility. Now you have hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of chicken litter and dead chicken carcasses within a few days. What are we supposed to do with that? What are the neighbors supposed to do with that situation? That's why we're saying the chicken farm is not a bad idea. The chicken farm in this location is a terrible idea. And we will fight this as hard as we possibly can. Thank you.
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
Do you foresee all these sub proposals and stuff like that being addressed before, I guess the earliest would be April, if he was gonna move forward in this?
I think we need to do that, yes.
Okay,
We try to move through things as expeditiously as we can, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we're thorough in the review as well.
absolutely. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
Again, I wanted to ask, how did they learn about this particular site being available? It seems that that stretch on Route 7 has always seemed to be up or pushed somehow for development. First, we had an oil station that was gonna be up there and a transfer station. That wasn't too long ago. Before that, it was a sawmill, adjacent to horses in the field and all. That did not go through. There were a lot of neighbors each time that really went the distance to prevent these types of businesses being put in. Is this being marketed somehow, or is it just put out, there's 18 acres for sale and it's up to whoever sees that listing to decide if they want to put a chicken farm there? And this really would be commercial, wouldn't it be?
I can't answer how the buyer purchased the property.
Okay.
Not aware of how that happened. Yeah, it could be any one of a number of things. If they were looking for a parcel in a given area, they can ask an agent. An agent has access to an MLS listing. They could look, they could find the listing. Could be any one of a number of ways.
Yeah, I understand that. It just seems that that piece or that stretch is always in the
I think
crossing.
some of it may be just a
Farming
product
solar
of
farm.
Yeah.
Google Earth.
Now they're gonna do
You're at the
battery.
intersection of a couple of highways with
They can-
a lot of traffic that goes through there.
Kind of makes me think of the weed farm too, that's right on Oak Hill
Yeah.
Road.
Oh,
There
right.
was one, and next thing you know, the whole sky's lit up for
Yeah.
6 miles, you can see it.
Right, and
You
now
know, they
it's
have
not
like
again.
6 buildings lit up.
And now they
It's like
want,
the whole
they want to
sky
do battery
red.
storage too. Battery storage is in a solar farm. That's gonna have toxic metals in there.
It's just an area that seems like everybody pushes everything too.
Yeah,
Would it assuage anybody's concerns or provide more information when the town makes their ultimate decision if there was like an open forum where people from the USDA or Ag and Markets came in and explained? Because I feel like the assumptions that are made about what will happen with chicken litter and how the management of the chicken farm will actually operate are antiquated. That's just not what the regulation is currently. And it's not going to get any easier. It's getting harder and harder to be any kind of farmer, especially a poultry farmer. So I'm just wondering, would that be something that the town would be willing to host if it helps to kind of rectify this issue and create some sort of
I'm gonna say, no matter what anybody tells me, comes in here and tells me, I'm not for a chicken farm in my backyard, a touching on my property. I'm not for it, no matter who tells me what.
I will say this, and I will also say it was a family member of mine that works for USDA who had spoken to me about this before I heard about it and said to me, you better look at CAFO standards. You better look at EPA because you're in an area that has 0 perk soil. And that's all I'm gonna say. And that was what was spoken to me.
And I
And
also,
because it's a family member, I have to defer to the other folks here to discuss with USDA. But I was essentially warned by USDA that this is something that needs to be under a lot of scrutiny.
well, it might not even be, I mean, if it's a CAFO, I think especially for poultry, there needs to be a mile. I think the guideline is a mile. You have to be a mile between the building or the unit and a residential unit. So,
that takes care of that.
There you go.
Within a mile.
but I think that, I mean, that's my understanding, but I think you need to check it. And, you know, there's not a lot of huge poultry farms here. If you go into other parts of the states, there's 20, you know, they're producing 20 to 40 million eggs a week. But they're huge operations. They're the cleanest operation you'll ever see.
They can go somewhere else, not
Right,
where
but
we
they're,
live.
what I'm saying, ma'am, is that they're big operations and they have the space. It's just flat for miles. They have the space where they can do something like that. So this is why I'm just saying, before a law is created that could potentially be detrimental to agriculture moving forward in this town, because I think we desperately need more agricultural operations in this town and a tax base that comes from that. We need to make sure that all of these questions are answered first. Because it might be a moot point. If that's the case where it's mild between a unit and a residential unit, then Chris can't, authorize that. There can't be a permit to build that. But I think these two issues need to be separated from each other. I guess that's my point.
If this were to be placed into law
Mhm.
and someone were to come along and had a large parcel that was in a remote area,
Mhm.
they can submit an application to the zoning board of appeals. And the zoning board of appeals can look at that and review that. And based upon the criteria, determine, and when that is done, notification is sent to all of the neighbors within 1,000 feet. So all the neighbors would be aware, they would have their opportunity to have input. And I think all of us are well aware of the fact, Jewett's, their last building that they had down there, they had 50,000 hens there. They were in the middle of 300 acres. I mean, they were seventh generation.
Exactly.
They'd been there a long time. So it's a different set of circumstances. And we recognize the concerns of these residents because this is a very confined area. And it's not a situation in any other animal husbandry facility in this town that I am aware of. The owners are on site. And I do know of others in Schoharie County where the owners are not on site. And I'm not gonna sit here to tell a lot of stories. We have a meeting here. It doesn't go well. People have gotta be on site when you've got animals.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all, Bill. I just feel like when something becomes a law, then it's a fixed matter versus a zoning board. Who knows who's gonna be on a zoning board in 20 years and what the circumstances might be and how arbitrary a decision might be in that situation. I just think these are essentially two separate matters, and 100 birds per acre. I mean, there are lots of farms within 100 miles of here that have more than 100 birds per acre, and there aren't issues. So I just think that these need to be kind of two separate issues. Whether or not the poultry farm goes in on Route 30, or if we pass this law, I don't think they should be contemporaneous to each other.
Thanks for your comment.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Bob Antonovich, 465 Oak Hill Road. I don't think I understand what you're saying, but I think we haven't really pushed enough on the chickens in 1.5 square acres or 1.5 square feet. So if you have multiple buildings, you're going to easily be able to exceed 40,000 chickens on those 15 or whatever acres, because you can just keep the chickens inside little cages. And the 1.5 square feet doesn't account for, you could put the chicken in a 1 foot square. It's pretty cruel. And so it doesn't account for all the storage of everything else, the humans and everything else. It's just looking at the square footage of the building and saying a chicken per 1.5. So the chickens are going to be crunched in there and they can stay in there. So what she's talking about having the free range chickens, and it's going to be a moot point because they're not going to have free range chickens with people not on site. Because the coyotes and everybody else will get them, they'll take off. Somebody's going to have to come in and push them back into the barn at night. So this is really if you put this law into place, it's green lighting this operation to immediately happen. So I agree that we need to look at this law a little bit more. Don't put it into place, and you have to strike down the 1.5 square foot per chicken. It's absolutely ridiculous. The chicken won't even be able to turn around.
Sadly, that's how most chickens live their lives. That's really
True.
unfortunate.
Yeah, and veal's delicious, and I'm sure we eat that too, but
Not me.
that's really the point I think we need to look at, is that this is going to be a full-fledged corporate operation, basically abusing chickens, and no one's going to be there. And it green lights
And the
50,000
neighbors.
plus chickens here.
And abusing the neighbors.
Some of the neighbors, yeah.
Anybody
So,
else?
thank you.
Would there be a continuation of this after this meeting?
We'll know that soon. The answer to that soon.
On this on what's documented here, but like I said, like I just asked, you know, to continue to work on this and to follow up on other people's suggestions or proposals. Will there be a follow-up on this? On this topic and different options?
We could have a continuation of the public hearing, if that's what, everybody feels is prudent, we can certainly do that.
Because those things that were submitted prior to, if that guy tomorrow hands in an application to Chris. Anything that's proposed prior to that to the town, will those things be looked at? Or is his application date?
Chris can't look at an application until he's got a septic approval and until the ground's frozen like it is right now, it'll be some time before we can even do a perk test.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? Do they actually require a well? Because they can just carry water in, right?
No, they have to have a well.
And it has to have a certain amount of
Yeah,
gallons per minute?
Yeah, they can't just bring water in. They're gonna need a certain amount of, and that's, I believe that's gonna be like USDA and stuff like that, how much water a chicken needs.
Right.
That's gonna, like, the town of Williamsburg doesn't know that, nor like we.
So there's no law in Duanesburg that you can give a permit for someone to build this.
No,
and
I
not
mean, we're
look at the
talking
water.
a house and animals are two different things.
Right,
For a house, it's 2 gallons a minute.
okay.
Okay, so, but for animals, I don't know what it is for animals. That's gonna be, I'm sure the USDA or somebody has guidelines on how much water you need
They can't build a giant
per
pond
chicken
or pool and
something.
carry it in. If they own land, say in the Schoharie Valley that has a nice spring and just
I can't
truck it
imagine.
in every day.
Again, I think that's
10,000 gallons a day is not that hard to do.
right, that's a farming, that would be the USDA, like, we don't have any.
A farm would own a truck and can easily tanker in.
Yeah, but the
One-
cost also affects what they're doing. so-
Yeah, but if they own the property with a spring on it, they could, it's not hard to.
There's no water there.
Yeah, but there are.
There's no water on their property, but there's a lot of water in the valley a mile away and they
Yeah.
might have a spring
Yeah.
where they can just come down, fill up the tractor trailer every other day and load up their pond.
Yeah.
So I don't think water's as big of an issue. It may not be. I was just asking if there's a law that they can't build, that Duanesburg has, unless they get a well, rather than have an outside supply where they can continuously bring it in.
For ag, I don't believe so. And here, the problem with ag is the town doesn't, as a code enforcement, from a code enforcement standpoint, ag is exempt from a lot of things in New York State.
Right.
And inspections is one of them.
So they probably don't need a well.
I'm sure they're gonna need a well by USDA or whoever the poultry, they're gonna want them to prove how much water they have, that they have enough water per chicken. That's gonna fall on them more than us, I think. And I could be wrong, but
But just for the record, Duanesburg doesn't have a rule against it.
not that I'm aware.
So that's something we need to look into.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
And Bill, for one point of clarification on your question, that 1.5 square foot is based on the total footprint of the building. So you would measure the building, they wouldn't necessarily be just in a 1.5 coop right there, just for
Could you
clarification.
stack them though?
Yeah, I think the law said you can stack them
You
too
can't
high.
too high, it says in this law.
But still based off the footprint of the building, so you would have to keep it under that number of chickens per space in the building.
Yeah,
just for
but you could
clarification.
build multiple 4,000 square foot buildings on 15 acres and it'll exceed 50,000 chickens. On that lot easily.
That's contingent upon the setback also, because there are setbacks. And take a look at the map of the property. It's actually split by the power line. Some of it is on one side of the power line, some of it is on the other. And there are setback requirements in zoning laws. And so there is a limitation to some extent as to where buildings can be located. So there definitely is a limit.
Okay, has anybody in this room calculated the limit on that based on the setbacks and?
You'd have to do an overlay in a map in order to.
Okay,
But the agricultural setbacks are actually more stringent than a residential. So you have to be 200 feet from the property line for the building, which is a long way. right? Your house only has to be 40 foot from the side property line. This barn or any barn for any agricultural housing animals has to be 200 feet from property lines. So to your point of putting a lot of buildings, you're not gonna be able to do a lot of buildings, multiple maybe.
Well, 2 floors high.
Based off of this, the size of this lot or the way that the shape of the lot, I don't see a lot of buildings going on this property. Just from what I've looked at and tried to lay out. But that's not to say they can't be more than one.
I just have another question about that 1 mile. What was your 1 mile thing?
I
What
think,
was-
don't quote me, but I think that, per EPA standards, it's not a USDA issue. I think it's an EPA issue because it really has to do with nutrient management, so runoff, et cetera. That if it qualifies as a contained animal feeding operation, which I don't know if this will or not, but if it does, I think it has to be a mile between the unit and a residential property.
Well, that should throw it right out if that is something, because there's a whole bunch of us that are.
Right, but that's contingent on if it qualifies as a CAPO,
A what?
a contained animal feeding operation. So, and there's, I mean, in Schenectady County, there are, especially for dairy, several farms that qualify as that, and I highly doubt that they're a mile from a residential unit, but I think that that is one of the stipulations.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your indulgence. Two things. 40,000 square feet in an acre. These two properties put together come up to 18 acres. So there, you could, the building that they're talking about already, 40 feet wide, 460 feet long, 18,600 square feet, half an acre. You can put two buildings on an acre. There's 18 acres. Do the math. 200-foot setbacks or not, do the math. You can get 36 buildings if there were no setbacks. Secondly, if they could be stacked together, it's 465 feet on an 18,000 square foot building. 465 feet times 2 rows times 2 more rows on the other side. Do those shelves count? Can you put chickens on those shelves and have 1.5 chickens per square foot on the shelves? You don't know.
You would still be basing that off of the footprint of the building itself, so you would.
So
still
we
have
know what
to-
the footprint is. It's 40 by 465. But you can stack them 200 all the way down the building on each side of it. Say 10, 12 feet wide. That's another thousands of square feet in that building. Does that count?
It would be based off of the actual building metrics that Chris would be looking at and everyone else would be looking at.
So to put it,
What does the law say? I'm asking what the law
to
says.
answer your question. That size building. With just one floor could house 10,666 chickens. Okay? 2 floors, that would be 21,000 plus. So that answers your question. I think that's what you're asking, right?
No, I'm not even saying it's a whole floor. I'm saying that they're stacked shelves. You've seen the drawing.
Yeah, I believe it's 2 levels is what the law says, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't say. It basically says total square footage of the building footprint plus 1 additional story, if such additional story is provided, right?
Okay,
So that, to me, the shelf is saying a story, right? That's the way I interpret that.
so you're saying that even with the law in place, they could put 20,000 chickens in that property? Per building? Per building?
Well,
It's square foot times 0.75 is the number of chickens you can put in it.
Okay.
So it's 1.5, too high is 0.75.
Okay,
So square foot times 0.75 is the number of chickens.
okay, so.
So that's 13,950 chickens in your 465 by 40 building.
So they need one.
And that's only one building.
Right. And I'm not saying that you can put 36 buildings in 18 in 18.
No, but you quickly exceed 40,000 chickens.
More like
14,000 chickens is too many.
4,000 chickens is too many. Thank you.
So is there a way that a person could do this and put a bond as we mentioned, I think it's having to do with I think it had to do with the battery storage. How do you protect the neighbors from living with a bankrupt, abandoned chicken coop with 20,000 chickens in it?
I think we've run across the right to farm law at that point.
How so?
By asking for a bond. You want every business that wants to move in be posting bonds. Should every homeowner, just because they may abandon it and not clean it up, post a bond?
With the magnitude of this project, I think it's reasonable.
They do generally, don't they pay PMI? Isn't that the same thing as a bond, pretty much? It's your insurance that your house is gonna be paid off if you peace out. I mean, you can't get a mortgage without it,
That's
right?
up to the bank.
Right, but I'm saying it's the same thing, it's insurance, the same as that.
I think we're getting diverted from what we're here to talk about, because with all due respects, we could draw many what if scenarios. And we just really don't know what could happen. I can't speculate what kind of capitalization may or may not have. We just don't know. We need to continue to focus on and we're very attentive to the concerns of the residents. I stated when we first started this, one of the things that I feel very strongly about that the board do is to protect the property values of residents. I think that's one of the more important things we have to look at. And so we've endeavored through the legal avenues that we have available to us, try to find a way to do that. And that's been our focus.
We appreciate that. But would the board be willing to go on record in saying that if the board is convinced through research and evidence that there is a potential danger to the neighbor's health, that they will deny the building permit on that basis? Will the board say that?
We have to apply the law.
We have to apply the law because another thing we need to do is to protect the town from liability litigation. And so that's when we defer to our town attorney, and they need to give us guidance as to, from a legal standpoint, what protects the town. And that doesn't mean we're not sympathetic to your circumstances, but we want to ask them, here's what we want to do. Give us an idea how to do this, but at the same time, we do have to operate within the confines.
Would it be within the town's legal right to deny the application based on concern for the health and safety of the neighbors? That's my question.
We would have to look at whether or not it would be a conforming use. We would have to look at whether or not
We know it's a conforming use. What's the answer about whether or not the town has the right to say no to this project because of a concern for the health of the neighbors? What's the answer there?
That would be something we have to look at with public health and the actual Department of Public Health.
Thank you.
And go through that.
Just one more and I'm done. It does seem like tonight there has been some new information provided, whether, it's kind of eye-opening to me, and there might be some other avenues as far as that goes. I can understand and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name there when you stood up, but I can understand what she has to say about free-range chickens compared to what I would consider this as a commercial farm in that area. I think with all the information that was tonight, I do think there's more things to possibly look at, and maybe we don't draw a conclusion tonight and just take another step back. It does sound like we do have a few months to really make sure we're making the right decision here. Not to bring this back on a couple years ago, but we did, adventure into the solar facilities, and we passed everything for battery energy storage. And if you look tonight, it looks like the next thing here is we're prohibiting it. So we kind of went into that not knowing things, and there was some concerns about it, and it was more or less of a, this seems safe. And you know, a year or so later, we're now realizing this wasn't such a good idea. So I think this is also something that we should really take a look at in her defense, you know, not put something in that may harm a small farm that's looking to do something here. And our focus, like everybody else here is tonight, is on, you know, the much larger scale commercial side. That's it. I'm done now.
Josh, just one note of clarification on the battery energy
Yes.
storage. That had been incorporated into the drawings that had been submitted by the developer for the Oak Hill project. There were a lot of questions with the town. There was not a clear understanding of the specifics of the batteries that were there. And because we're essentially in the infancy of this technology.
Oh, yeah.
The solar law hadn't addressed that. There weren't enough, and any of us can ride around here, drive up Route 30 in the town of Florida and look what happened before the solar laws were in place. So this has essentially been a working process.
Yeah.
It wasn't recognized, and I'm not trying to pass the buck when I say I wasn't here at that time. There were other people.
No, I understand
In their
that.
defense, we couldn't see that coming.
I was there for the meeting when myself and another town member asked if there was battery energy storage in that system. And the town replied, no, there was not. They were very clear that it was not, and then come to find out it was in there. So it was there. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, the initial plans did not have it. Because when they came back, they made changes which added it, which is why they had to go entirely through the process of approval from A to Z, because they had changed the storage.
Right, and that's when we said this probably isn't a good idea, and right.
And we got everything, we got stuff from China, we got stuff from states. And there was, at that time, there was nothing that said that, you know, it was going to be causing the fires that it ended up doing.
I mean, at the time, your cell phones were blowing up on airplanes, so we knew batteries were an issue, and we also, you know, and the volunteer fire department here is phenomenal, don't get me wrong.
Maybe we should finish.
You're right,
this
I'm sorry.
discussion before we
I
get into
apologize.
that.
You're right.
Any other comments on the public hearing currently open for the poultry husbandry law? Any other comments?
Make a motion to close the, oh no. we're
No,
gonna keep it
Keep it
right?
open.
We're gonna,
Make a motion to continue the public hearing for the adoption of local law number 1 of 2025, amending the town zoning ordinance to define poultry husbandry and to establish the maximum density of poultry husbandry.
second. Any other discussion? Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember St. Julie.
Aye.
Councilmember Papano.
Aye.
Mayor Israel.
Aye.
Motion to open public hearing. The town is considering the adoption of local law number 2 of 2025 to amend the wind law, local law number 2 of 2018 compared to battery energy storage systems, notation BESS, titled Wind Energy Law BESS Restrictions.
Second.
Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember St. Julie.
Aye.
Councilmember Pat.
Aye.
Councilmember Hudson.
Aye.
Mayor Israel.
Aye. It will open the floor for comment now. If anyone would like to comment on our public hearing number 2 tonight. And this is addressing the prohibition of battery energy storage on wind energy facilities. Any comments at all? I will make a motion that we close the public hearing on the wind energy battery second restriction. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Papano.
Aye.
Councilmember St. Julie.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing, the town is considering the adoption of local law number 3 of 2025 to amend the solar law, local law 1 of 2023, amended by local law 3 of 2024 to prohibit battery energy storage systems, BESS, titled Solar Law Best Restrictions.
Second. Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Capano.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant. Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Okay, we'll now open the floor to comments on the restriction of battery energy storage on any future, I'll clarify, future solar facility builds. Does anyone like to comment on that? More time, any comment on that?
I just have a question. If we prohibit it, does it also detract the development of solar arrays or alternate energy from being developed in Twinsburg?
It does not. They would have the opportunity, if they wanted to do so, to locate the batteries in an off-site area.
Gotcha, thank you.
Any other comments?
So I just want to get some clarification. This whole battery law, you're gonna ban large scale battery storage. Is that what all these laws are that you're talking about?
It would prohibit battery energy storage systems on wind or solar power generation facilities. And as I clarified, this is for any future. This will not have any impact on the Oak Hill facility, as that was already in place prior to the inception of this law, if we pass this.
Okay. How do we find out what's on that? How big is that battery and what's in it?
Our building inspector can address that.
I would have to get you the specs on stuff, on that
Okay.
stuff.
I have the documents. I don't.
Yeah, they're not, yeah, I don't have them with me and I don't have them memorized, I can tell you that.
Okay,
I think those are available online.
okay.
Deal with chickens.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Motion to close the public hearing. The town is considering the adoption of local law number 3 of 2025 to amend the solar law, local law 1 of 2023 as amended by local law 3 of 2024 to prohibit battery energy storage systems, BESS, title of solar law, BESS restrictions.
Second. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Capano.
Aye.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant. Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Okay, our fourth and final public hearing of the evening.
The town is considering the adoption of local law number 4 of 2025, amending the town zoning ordinance definition of public utility to add a definition of battery energy storage system, BESS, and to update the permitted public utility use to prohibit BESS titles, BESS restrictions.
Second. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Capano.
Aye.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant. Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. We'll now open the floor to comment over the adoption of the law that would amend zoning ordinance to prohibit battery energy storage. This is just an expound on the prior 3 amendments. This would provide the definitions of the specifics of what battery energy storage entails. Anybody would like to comment?
Motion to close the public hearing. The town is considering the adoption of local law number 4 of 2025, amending the town zoning ordinance definition of public utility to add a definition of battery energy storage systems, quotation BESS, and update the permanent public utility use to prohibit BESS titles, BESS restrictions.
Thanks. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Capano. Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant. Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Okay, I'll move on to approval of this.
Motion to approve end of year town board meeting on Thursday, December 7th.
Good. Second. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Grant. Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Capano.
Aye.
Santilli.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. We're gonna take a little break. If we went through public hearings, if anyone feels as though they don't wanna stay through and try to stay awake through the rest of our meeting, you're welcome to do that. Thank you for your participation.
CAFO.
Thank you.
I'm gonna wear a hole right in there, a wall right there.
I no idea who it even is. Not until I read the meeting notes. Yeah, no problem. Bye, Bill. Bye, guys.
Take care now. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
And number two. All right, motion for the approval of minutes for organizational town board meeting on January 6th, 2025.
Second. Clerk will roll please.
Councilmember Light.
Aye.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Councilmember Plasko.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant. Aye. That's fine.
Aye. Great, town clerk's report, December.
Total local shares remitted, $1,670.47. Total non-local revenues, $49.89. For state, county, and local revenues, $1,720.36.
Looks like Western Company.
Yes. Good. Would yours get stapled? Am I?
Okay, thank you. All right, supervisor report. Revenues, general fund, $150,379.25. Highway fund, $910.76. Sewer district number one, $5.43. Sewer district number two, $189.32. Sewer district number three, $10.77. Total revenues, $151,495.53. Disbursements, general fund, $97,351.68. Highway fund, $18,775.55. Sewer district number one, $11,795.85. Sewer district number two, $5,902.72. Sewer district number three, $3,789.32. Total disbursements, $137,615.12.
General Fund A, $14,803.71. General ODB, $358.23. Highway Fund BA, $2,435.35. Lighting District number one, $603.37. Lighting District number two, $1,190.31. Lighting District number three, $529.15. Sewer District number one, $131,146.69. Sewer District number two, $78,915.36. Sewer District number three, $3,710.43. Total transfers to AP, $233,692.
Second. Any discussion? Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Councilmember Love.
Aye.
Councilmember Plasko.
Aye.
Councilmember Santilli.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Okay, we go on to committee reports. Highway. Accepted the resignation at our last meeting of Highway Superintendent Bill Reed. And our new highway superintendent, Keith Hudson, has started this week. And everything has been pretty docile so far, weather-wise. as far as the roads are concerned. Other than that, we'll move on to public safety. Diane, I know they had a meeting last night.
Yeah. Nothing.
That's very important.
There's-
Okay.
Did you? I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
I'll move on to parks. We've talked for a long time about a skating rink. And we're kind of like the first oyster for the town with a skating rink, that we haven't done this before. And when it was initially flooded, because it's in an area, the whole town is, everybody knows how hard the wind is blowing the past few days. A lot of the water got blown off the tarp and then it froze, and it's been frozen since that time. And a lot of the tarp is up above the water. So we're in a hold pattern at this juncture until we can get enough softening of the ice that's on it, so that we can get the tarp in place, so that we can have water up over the top of it. And Chris and Dale, if I missed anything on that, I'm going to ask you to chime in.
Well, we've changed it. The original design, we had a 3.5 inch pipe that went around the perimeter. This went up over top of it. We had tapered off on each baseline. So then we've got 2x10s. So we're gonna build a box, set this tarp in and drape it over and fasten it so that and fill it with water so that it doesn't get underneath it and lift it up. So it's kind of been an experiment.
It's been a trial and error.
Yes.
And we made progress on it. Maybe if we get a January thaw for a few days, it'll soften up so we can get water on it. and get it
Hopeful this week.
Sewer, Andy, you got anything?
We don't need a thaw. Like, we're gonna start it next week.
Oh, you're gonna still be, you've got.
I spent,
Sideboards are high enough, they're over
I
the top.
spent a whole day down there breaking ice with a sledgehammer. To get all the ice off of that part.
Well, thank you for your efforts. I
So-
was not aware of it.
Because we weren't gonna get a thaw anytime soon.
No, we know that.
So I think Monday, me and Dale said we're gonna give it a go to start building the box, and hopefully by the middle of next week, we can get some water.
Good, sounds good. Well, the long range looks pretty good for ice, for sure. Very good, okay. Appreciate your effort. Andy, sewer, you got anything?
Unfortunately, we do have a violation, for DOT. One of the equipment, on the EQ tanks tripped. It wasn't really bad. It was, we're allowed 5 and it was an 8, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And it's been fixed since. And the only other thing, it's, about 20 years old now. We're going through a lot of grinder pumps, but that's just routine maintenance. So. That's it.
Okay. Mike, you got anything on IT for us?
No, I think so.
Okay. Well, give Diane just a minute here. We'll get started on the business meeting. Start with
Motion to reappoint Charles Leone to the zoning board of appeals. There. The town hereby reappoints Charles Leone to the zoning board of appeals of the town of Waynesburg for a term ending on December 31st, 2029.
Second. Any discussion? Just say Charles has been somebody that stood up for the town for a long time. His efforts are greatly appreciated. Clerk call the roll, please.
Councilmember Chantilly.
Aye.
Councilmember Lux.
Aye.
Councilmember Passman.
Aye.
Councilmember Grant.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to reappoint Daniel Boggs to the zoning board of appeals. The town hereby appoints Daniel Boggs, the zoning board of appeals from the town of Waynesburg, for a term ending December 31st, 2020.
Discussion on this, Mr. Boggs also has been on the zoning board of appeals for a long time, and that myself and the whole board can certainly appreciate your service. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye.
Motion to appoint Josh. Oh, motion to appoint Caitlin Matto to the zoning board of appeals. The town hereby reappoints Caitlin Matto to the zoning board of appeals of the town of Duansburg for a term ending on December 31st, 2029.
Second.
Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye.
Motion to reappoint Josh Houghton to the planning board. The town hereby reappoints Josh Houghton to the planning board of the town of Waynesburg for a term ending on December 31st, 2031.
Second. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Motion to reappoint Mike Harris to the planning board. The town hereby reappoints Mike Harris to the planning board of the town of Duansburg for a term ending on December 31st, 2031.
Second.
Clerk call roll, please. Let me just add before, I didn't want to address each one of these, so I'll just say in summary. Each one of these folks, volunteering in their time to serve on these boards, it's a big commitment. They do a very good job. We're fortunate to have them and we appreciate their efforts very much. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye.
Motion to enter into agreement with Bowman Consulting Group, Civic Costs LLC, and Omni Computers and Supplies, Inc. Whereas the town wishes to enter into agreements with Bowman Consulting Group Limited for landfill monitoring services, Civic Costs LLC for website hosting services, and Omni's Computer and Supplies, Inc. for computer and software services, and whereas the town board has carefully reviewed the agreements, now therefore be it resolved, the town board approves and authorizes the town supervisor to execute the agreements attached thereto.
Second. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Okay, so that will take care of our business meeting, and we'll now open up the floor to the privilege of the floor. Got enough for tonight? Okay.
We motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters and safety issues.
I want to add one thing to that. We also want to discuss collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law.
Second.
Clerk call roll, please.
Councilman Grant.
Aye.
Councilman Paxton.
Aye.
Councilman Santilli.
Aye.
Councilman Bluff.
Aye.
Supervisor Wilt.
Aye. Thank you very much.